don't have an intro clip for this last little piece. I'm going to editorialize for a few minutes. If you've watched any of the coverage today, you're going to hear this again because I think it bears repeating. If you haven't watched the coverage today, this is an important thing really to watch. Yesterday, Tucker Carlson has his show on Fox News. Tucker Carlson Tonight. It's the most watched show on Fox News. About 5 million people watch it, despite the fact that his number of advertisers continues to dwindle. And Tucker Carlson went full Goebbels last night. And I'm just going to roll this clip. And Jennifer and I are going to unpack it for a few minutes.
So what does all of this mean exactly? We're not sure what it means, and we're not going to speculate. We do know for certain that the known facts of what happened on January 6th deviate in very important ways from the story they are now telling us, including the story they told us today in the impeachment hearings. And in many places, the known facts bear no resemblance to the story they're telling. They're just flat out lying. There's no question about that. The question is, why would they lie about this? For an answer, think back to last spring. Beginning on Memorial Day, BLM and their sponsors in corporate America completely changed this country. They changed this country more in 5 months than it had changed in the previous 50 years. How'd they do that? They used the sad death of a man called George Floyd to upend our society. Months later, we learned that the story they told us about George Floyd's death was an utter lie. There was no physical evidence that George Floyd was murdered by a cop. The autopsy showed that George Floyd almost certainly died of a drug overdose, fentanyl. But by that point, facts didn't matter. It was too late. Cities had been destroyed, along with the fabric of this country itself. Scores of people had been killed. Democratic partisans used a carefully concocted myth, a lie, to bum rush America into overturning the old order and handing them much more power. It worked flawlessly. So why wouldn't they do it again?
We are not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
So, Jennifer, I wasn't aware that Black Lives Matter had corporate sponsors. I went in on that corporate sponsor money.
Yeah, I didn't know either. Tucker Carlson is like the worst kind of dangerous because he does not believe a fucking word of what he says. He doesn't. But sorry. But
I love being able to hit the button. There's nothing. I live for that button.
But he is one of the type that we were talking about before the show. We always, not us. A lot of people tend to discount people or write off people that watch Fox News and buy into this as they lack from education and tend to let them play the victim card a little bit. There are a lot of really educated, particularly white men, that are invested in this narrative, propagate it because it's what they want to believe and because it keeps them in positions of wealth and privilege. Tucker Carlson is one of these people. He doesn't believe a word he says. He doesn't, but it helps keep him in wealth and privilege. So he's going to disseminate that story far and wide to as many people as will listen to it.
And his words are really terrifying. I mean, when he says words like old order, that is like right out of Goebbels writing a speech for, propaganda. Old order. The first thing I thought was like, holy crap, this is like terrifying. And cities burned down. What? What city was destroyed? I'm not aware of any city that was destroyed in the United States.
By BLM and their corporate sponsors?
They were using Molotov cocktails with Coca-Cola logos on them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Corona beer. This protest is brought to you by Corona beer. Corona.
Yeah.
Beer that white people drink when they pretend that they like Mexicans. Corona beer.
Exactly. On Cinco de Mayo that they don't understand.
Yeah. It's Mexican. It's Corona. It's gross is what it is. It's gross beer. If you want a really good beer, from Latin America or Central America, you could go to Nicaragua and get a Victoria Frost. God, I could drink a dozen of those. That's good beer. Scores of people killed. I mean, a score is 20.
Yeah.
So, we're talking dozens and dozens of people. The fabric of the nation torn apart.
Yeah.
More change than in 50 years and in 5 months. Reagan, Cold War, eliminating usury laws, taxing all of his tax cuts, taxing Social Security, collapse of the Soviet Union, destabilization of the communist regimes in Central America, his meddling in the war in Afghanistan, which led to essentially the 9/11 attacks. And then we had meddling in Somalia that resulted in the collapse of that government and led to Black Hawk Down in 1993, and then led to multiple Taliban terrorist attacks in the African continent. So are you telling me that there's been more change than that in the last 5 months? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, let's not forget about things like NAFTA, which destabilized places like Mexico and drove immigration because, they didn't have the appreciation for their agricultural community. And it's been an absolute shit show for them. Excuse my language again. So, yeah, there's all of these different things, a lot of things that get overlooked that have changed in the past 50 years and had really negative consequences, generally for not white people. But Tucker Carlson, yeah, he's gross, and somebody needs to tell him that his fake tan is shit. I'm just going to leave that there. So
now here's the terrifying thing about this, because the opening part of this is essentially, he doesn't say that the attack on the Capitol is a hoax. He doesn't say those words, but he basically says it's a lie. They're lying. It didn't happen. We know what happened. It didn't happen. Now, if a person is consuming their information from Fox News yesterday, when they were showing the videos, and they were showing videos that never been seen before, Fox News abruptly cut away. And they went to a completely different programming. And Tucker Carlson in that same clip, Jennifer, said, I didn't even watch any of the hearings. So how does he know that it was all lies if he didn't even watch it by his own admission?
Because he doesn't care.
Well, I know that, and you know that, but his viewers don't understand that. And so as far as the viewers are concerned, the truth is the big lie.
We need to stop giving them a pass. A lot of them know. They're just choosing to believe this because it's what they want to believe, because they don't want change. So we have to stop giving these poor people that are stupid and don't have education and watch Fox News, and so they don't understand how bad things are, and they're just being fed these lies and they don't know any better. Bullshit. They know better.
There you go, malcontents. We have controversy finally.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I love controversy. My belief is that there is a subset in this country that have been radicalized in the same way that people were radicalized in the big lie, the dogma of the big lie, in Germany in the 1920s and the 1930s, and in the Middle East during the 1990s, and then again in the 2010s. It's the exact same playbook that is being played. The three elements are the same. The first thing is that liberals, if we say use the Middle East examples, it's liberal, decadent Western life is going to come. They're going to bring casual burqa Fridays, and you're only going to be able to, you're only going to have one wife, and there's going to be movies, and you're going to listen to rap music, and it's going to be the end of civilization. So that's their liberalization. In the case of Germany, I'm talking for the propaganda piece. In the case of Germany, the United States, the liberalization it's the socialists, it's the communists, and of course, socialist is no longer scary enough in the United States. Communist is no longer scary enough. It's Marxists. And I'm like, Marx was a philosopher. Anybody who studied Economics 101 studied Marx.
Yeah, I've read Marx. I've read the Communist.
I've read Marx too. I took economics.
I read Capital. God help me. I was in a Marx discussion group. It's a lot. Yeah, I think this is very true. And some of the things they buy into, and we talk about it a lot in the context of how much they're borrowing from Germany and this whole idea of, communism and things like this, and socialism and whatever. But do you remember when was it a couple years ago when some white men went and tried to invade Nicaragua, based on William Walker's filibustering in the 1850s when he basically went down there and declared himself king?
I vaguely remember this weirdness. I vaguely remember this.
Huge thing in QAnon, and they were like super into this filibustering thing. They just thought you could go to other countries and take over because, brown people can't self-govern. That's what, America's told themselves to justify conquest for how long. So, they do borrow a lot from Germany's playbook, but hey, Germany borrowed a lot from our playbook too.
The idea of eugenics came from the United States. That's part of our dark history. And there were people going back to the mid 1800s when this was just starting to really kick in the United States. They were like, back to Bismarck. This is kind of a cool idea. And to your point, Jennifer, and I know I'm talking to the historian, and I always try to stay in my lane here, but the roots of the Nazi Party can be traced all the way back to the mid 1800s. And this whole thing of blood and iron, right? Blood and our blood and soil is what was adopted by the Nazis, but it was blood and iron by Bismarck in the 1850s.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And, we talk about eugenics too, but there's also like multiple forms of eugenics. You have like French eugenics, which went down into Latin America. Then you had British, European, more European, not French eugenics that came into the United States. But if you want to know who one of the progenitors of racial science was in the 19th century, it was Thomas Jefferson in his book, Notes on the State of Virginia. He was one of the progenitors of racial science.
Very true. Very, very true. Well, if you're wondering why when your batshit crazy uncle from Tulsa, Oklahoma calls you up and goes, I saw on the news that Seattle burned down and I'm worried about you. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what are you talking about, Uncle Jerry? It's on the news. Seattle burned down. Uncle Jerry, there's no fires in Seattle. No, it's on the news. I saw, what news channel? Fox News. Tucker Carlson. Because that's all Uncle Jerry is listening. And I know people have said they've had these conversations and they've tried to, it's like, no, it's burning down. It's like, it's not burning down, Uncle Jerry. Honest, it's not. We're all good. It's all good here. You're lying. If I was lying and the city's burned down, how am I talking to you? What was that, Jennifer?
It's too much snow for fires outside right now.
Is there that much snow?
It's still snowing. I'm looking down, my bushes are covered, and I'm in Seattle, the middle of Seattle.